Hello YouTube, my name is National Master Robert Plunkett, and this is going to be the first video in my series of opening novelties. If you like this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. We're going to go ahead and dive right into it. I'm going to show you a novelty in the Accelerated Dragon. So after the moves e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, g6 begins the Accelerated Dragon. Of course, c4 is possible here. We're not going to look at that move. We're going to focus on knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3 to hold the knight, knight f6, and now the old main line, which is actually quite good, or the modern main line as you want to call it, is actually quite good, which is bishop c4 to keep a grip on d5. And after this, one of the main moves is queen a5, and that basically forces white, because of the pressure here, it forces white to castle kingside, and the position is considered slight edge white according to theory. And if you want to play this, by all means play this. This is a decent position for white. Of course, when I play chess, I try to get my opponent into a position maybe that they're not familiar with, and that's the whole point of playing a novelty, is you want to try to get your opponent into a position that they're unfamiliar with. So what I'm going to recommend is a different move. I'm going to recommend not playing this modern main line. Instead, I'm going to recommend a novelty in this position. And that move is, we're going to start with f3. Now, f3 itself isn't a novelty. It's been known for quite a while. The issue is that most books will give f3 as either a position that's slightly better for black, or it'll give it as a position that's equal. And I'm going to show you a new way of playing this move f3 that perhaps maybe will put this move in a new light. Maybe you'll look at this move and say, well, maybe this is not equal. Maybe this is a very slight edge for white in all cases. And more importantly, this is a position that maybe you can understand and maybe be more familiar with than black, because black has maybe dismissed this position, or maybe black has chosen one line to play against this position and assumed that he was winning. I myself have played this move on many occasions, and I have a very, very good record with it, with the white pieces. So basically, first off, d5. d5 right away doesn't work. You have bishop b5, and then they would have to defend, and then you have e takes d5, simply winning a pawn. So d5 immediately does not work. Another move immediately that does not work is queen b6. And I show both of these moves because both of these moves do get played quite a bit. After queen b6, knight f5, queen takes b2, and you can take with check right away, or simply knight a4, hitting the queen. Queen b4, c3, attacks the queen, protects the knight, queen a5, and now knight takes g7 check. King f8, bishop h6, and white's position is basically winning. White has an extra piece in this position, and has a fairly strong attack as well. So we're going to go back, and we're not going to play either one of those moves. Instead, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the main move, which is castles kingside here. And now you actually have two options. Basically, white needs to prevent d5. So the move queen d2 is bad because it allows d5, and books give this position as slight edge black, and that assessment I do agree with. I think this is slight edge black. The two moves that I think are very playable here are both kind of novelties, although they've both been played in the past, and I'll go ahead and I'll tell you when. But one move that you could try is simply knight b3, and the point of knight b3 is just simply to prevent b5. And you would maybe proceed with the moves queen d2, bishop e2, castles kingside, etc. I prefer a kingside castling plan here, because one of my plans in this type of position is to put pressure on the center and to put pressure on the queen side. So it's a different kind of approach to the position. I don't actually plan on pushing my kingside pawns with h4, h5, etc., as you would see in a normal Yugoslav. So that's one idea that's very playable, is knight b3. And you can play this and take somebody out of their book, and you can get a position that maybe you understand a little bit deeper or a little bit more accurately than black does. Another approach is bishop c4. And this is the old move that was kind of thought to be bad, is you play bishop c4 and you protect d5. And the move that people think refutes this setup, because most people, they don't just want to transpose into a regular dragon. They don't want to play d6, bishop b3, bishop d7, queen d2, etc., etc. And now we're just playing a normal Yugoslav attack. They want something more. They accelerated the dragon for a reason. They want to get something out of it. So their big plan is they want to refute this setup. They want to say, no, you can't do this because I accelerated my dragon, and that gives me this additional option, so I should be allowed to play queen b6. Of course, when you play a move like queen b6, and a lot of players don't realize this because they say, oh, I played this move because it's theory. They don't realize this queen is actually from a classical perspective, it's a little misplaced. You've made an early queen move in the opening, you've put your queen on a diagonal that is shared with this bishop, and your queen isn't really all that comfortable on b6. We think this move is playable, of course, and theory holds that this leads to slight advantage black, but theory holds that because the only variation that people have really spent a lot of time looking at is the move bishop b3. Of course, knight f5 here does not work, and that's critical to understand, because after queen to b2, knight a4, queen b4, like we tried in the previous line, in this case, this check and the bishop is hanging. And also note that the bishop on g7 is not hanging, so in this case, black would win a whole piece. And black has this whole host of tactical threats with knight to e4 and knight to g4 all possible, triple attacking this knight. And other knight moves leave the bishop on e3 hanging. So with all these problems, it seems like this position, like maybe bishop b3 is the only solution. Of course, after bishop b3, I would agree that black is either equal or slightly better here. I think both of those assessments are accurate. And the main line with knight to e4, and now if we just take knight takes d4, we're just up a whole pawn for black. So knight d5 is the only logical move. Queen a5, c3, knight c5. Now knight takes c6 because I need to get my pawn back. bc6, knight e7 check, king h8, knight takes c8, rook takes c8, and this position is equal or possibly a little bit better for black. The pawn structure is symmetrical. White's king is pretty loose in this position. Black will have access to both these open files at some point. Being careful not to drop this pawn, obviously. And I think because of black's piece placement and because of the more secure position of the black king, I think black is probably got a slight edge here. Not much to write home about, though. The handful of times this has been played, usually it ends in some sort of draw. So this isn't devastating for white. But I think white has an alternative. And this alternative actually was introduced quite a while ago. This alternative was introduced back in the 1950s by a very strong player, by a player that was definitely a world champion caliber player. A player by the name of Paul Carres played this move against queen b6. He played a3. And this is the novelty kind of I'm recommending. It's not a novelty, but very rarely played move and very rarely seen move, a3. And this move is actually aimed against all of the tactical shots, like knight takes e4, queen takes b2. This move is aimed against all of these tactical shots against this queen. It's also aimed against this queen. We're trying to show that this queen is in an uncomfortable place. Now, this move is anti-intuitive to a lot of Dragon players and a lot of Yugoslav players. A lot of Dragon and Yugoslav players think, well, I can't play a move like a3 because if I play a normal Yugoslav with queen d2, bishop b3, and castle's queenside, this move a3 doesn't make any sense. I've weakened my queenside, I've moved pawns over here, and this doesn't fit with my Yugoslav plan. And you're right, it doesn't. So you're not going to play a normal Yugoslav. You have a totally different plan in this position. And that's kind of the brilliance of this move. And then I'm gonna dive right into first the tactical replays. Why do the tactical replays fail? Then I'm gonna talk about the alternative plan, and then I'm gonna try to cover maybe one other try that black has to try to get something out of the position. All of which I believe after a3 lead to slight advantage white. I believe white's just slightly better. First, let's start with the tactical tries. The simplest, queen takes b2, fails immediately, knight a4, and the queen is trapped. This move a3 made it impossible for queen takes b2 to happen because we're not covering the a3 square. So another option is, of course, knight takes e4. I would say this is the most common move that I see, and it's also totally losing. Once you play knight takes e4, the game is effectively over. White's going to be up a piece and possibly more. So after knight takes e4, again we do this reply. Again, not takes on e4 because this is triple attack. So knight to d5, and now there's two main options here. There's queen to b2, well, three main options: queen to b2, queen a5, and queen c5. And I've seen all three, and all three lose in their own way. Queen a5 loses pretty simply. We've played a3. This allows b4. We're not attacking the queen or attacking the knight, and we're simply winning a piece. So that's fairly straightforward. Another possibility is the move queen to b2. And in this case, we would take the knight on e4, because it's a piece. And now, if they take this knight on d4 with the bishop, their queen is trapped after rook a2. This queen now has nowhere to go. Okay, so like they could play check, king f2, and now they have to give up their queen. So you're winning a queen here. That's definitely a winning position for white. So the other option is they can try knight takes d4, and you would again trap the queen with rook a2. Queen is still trapped. So the only move that makes sense is knight to c2, and at this point your best is queen c2. They would exchange queens. And at this point, white is up a piece. And it does look like black has a lot of pawns for these pieces, but the problem is he can't keep them. Well, black has got very little activity right now. White has a lot of activity, and he has some very vicious threats in the position right now. He is threatening to take this pawn with check, but this pawn can't really be defended in this position, because if we try to defend this pawn, like let's just say e6 or bishop f6 or whatever, we're losing a whole lot of material over here. This is another threat in the position. Knight c7, rook b8, bishop takes a7. So in this position, with the multiple threats of winning pawns, and the fact that white can simply castle kingside and rook f2, and he can build a lot of pressure against f7, we have a very strong position for white. I would say that white is not just better, white is clearly better. White has almost a winning position at this point. Okay, so another possibility that gets played after knight to e4, and I would say I see this one up a lot as well, is people realize, okay, these two moves are not very good after knight e4. Knight e4, knight d5. Okay, so knight takes e4, knight d5. Another move that gets thrown in a lot is the move queen c5. Okay, so queen c5, they figure, okay, my knight's being attacked, I'll counterattack your bishop. Okay, so now knight takes c6. We can't play queen takes c6, because knight to e7 check would fork the king and queen. Queen e3 is no good because the knight's holding it. So, again, the only move that makes logical sense, queen takes bishop. The knight that was attacked takes on e7 with check, king h8, and then we simply take our piece. Now, at this point, white's up a whole piece. I could just stop here and say white's up a piece, white's better. But I'll just go ahead and I'll show you the line that typically gets played here, because I've played this game probably several times, and it ends fairly easily, and white's plan from here is really straightforward. Queen takes e4 usually gets played because they try to get a pawn back. Castle's kingside, defending, developing. At this point, black needs to do something. He needs to develop. So d6, I would say, is the most common move. And now rook f4. And my plan is really simple. I want to trade off the dark square bishops and put my queen on dark square, throw my rook over on f1, and just dominate f6. And it works really well. Many moves are possible here. We'll play maybe one of the better moves. Queen e6, bishop d4. Maybe they develop a piece. Now we exchange. If they didn't develop a piece or whatever, this is always the plan, just to exchange the dark squared bishops. Bring my queen to the dark squares. Bring my rook to the dark squares. And then usually at this point, my opponent will just simply resign. He's down a piece, and I'm breaking through. I'm going to play rook takes f6. Something's going to capture on f6, and it's going to be very painful, and this game is going to be over very quickly. So that is why the tactical shots don't work. So we're going to go back, and we're going to see what does work, or what is better than the tactical shots. So the next, we're going to go into the positional idea behind this move a3, which is basically, what if black just does nothing? What if he does like a nothing move and says, okay, you played a3, you can't play your Yugoslav off. I'm going to play like a normal looking dragon. I'm going to play d6. What are you going to do now? So he plays his d6 move. What are you going to do now? Well, at this point, you actually need to play kind of a unique strategy, which is kind of interesting. You need to make sure that none of the tactical shots work while finding a way to improve your position in a way that makes sense, considering that you've just weakened your queen side. And again, my goal is to kind of prove that this queen is a little misplaced and that this queen will have to move back. And Paul Carey's actually showed the path here. The move that he came up with was knight on c to e2, which is a very interesting move. It reinforces d4. So now, of course, none of these moves are going to work, because in this case we just take, because we're protecting this enough times. And the move queen b2 is still under wraps, because we can trap the queen with the move bishop to d3. And now the threat of rook a2 is unstoppable and will simply be up a queen. So let's just say black continues. He says, so what? He plays bishop d7, and he just continues developing. And now we play this, bishop a2. And I know you're looking at this, these moves are crazy, because we just developed all of our pieces, and then we set up this Yugoslav formation. We were going to play queen d2 and castles queenside, and now we're not. Of course not. We're changing our plan. And this was, again, two moves that were introduced by Paul Carey, knight here and bishop here. The plan is very simple. He wants to push these queenside pawns. He wants to play c4 and b4, and he's going to end up with a Maraxi bind type of position, where black's queen is on b6, and he's been advancing his queenside pawns, and the queen is very uncomfortable on b6. So basically he's saying, okay, I've wasted some moves, maybe achieving this Maraxi bind, but none of my pieces are misplaced. This bishop is better placed on a2 than d3. From a2 it controls the d5 square. This knight is not misplaced on e2, it's reinforcing d4, which makes sense because you fiend shadowed your bishop. But you're going to have to move your queen out, and you're going to have to move your queen back, because at some point the queen just is not going to feel comfortable on b6. And that's basically what happens. After, say, a move like rook c8, I would first castle, and I do this for a very specific reason. If I play c4 after queen b2, and after simplifying on d4, I don't want my pawn on g2 to be hanging. So it's kind of an advanced reason, it's a tactical reason. I don't want g2 to be hanging, but now I'm ready to play c4 and d4. And black really doesn't have much better here than honestly just retreating his queen, like queen d6, c4, and I will continue with b4 at some point, and this position is just simply slight advantage white. White has a Maraxi bind structure, and he hasn't wasted a lot of moves achieving it, and his pieces in some ways are on possibly better squares than they would be in a normal Maraxi bind structure. And it's a very unique and very interesting way of playing the position, but clearly this is, I think this is slight edge white. So we'll go back and we'll take a look at one more try that black has that a lot of people think is the best try for black. And that try is either knight g4 right away, or queen c5, bishop a2, and then knight g4. And these ideas are pretty much the same. They're very similar. So I'll just cover them both kind of from this position, which I think is maybe a slightly better way of getting to it. So a lot of people think after this, they think, okay, black's position is now slightly better. The tactical try with knight e4 doesn't work, but clearly the positional / tactical try with knight g4 must be the way that white is still slight advantage, that black is still slight advantage, because white can't get away with this nonsense. I'm going to try to explain why I think that's maybe not the case. So f takes g4. Okay, so now if knight takes d4, the knight is pinned, and we can just proceed with some normal looking moves to take advantage of this pin, like maybe even just something as simple as queen d2. And this is not comfortable. So normally people play bishop takes d4 here. And then bishop takes d4. And again, knight d4 is certainly possible here, but after queen d2, I like white's chances. So you got a weak king side over here. So normally people play queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and now castle's queen side. The knight comes back to c6. And at this point, a lot of people think, well, white's position is not very good, because look at this pawn structure. I have double pawns, I have an isolated pawn on e4. My pawn structure, white's pawn structure is inferior to black's pawn structure, and therefore black has an advantage here. And black intends to play simple moves like d6 and plan a knight on e5, and once the knight gets to e5, this knight can't be easily removed. So obviously black's position must be better in some way. I disagree. I think actually it's white's position that's better. And I'll explain this in the simplest way that I can without getting into huge details. But there's two reasons. Number one, chess is played in terms of plans. It's not played because my pawn structure is this, your pawn structure is that. You have to have a plan that goes with that. I see white's plan. I see several plans for white. White has pressure on the d file, pressure on the f file. White can advance his pawn here, g5, create a bind. He can play h4, h5. He can also, after he plays knight d5, he can advance his queenside pawns with moves like c4, b4, maybe king b2. He can advance his queenside pawns and maybe create a pass pawn on the queenside down the road. So in short, I see plans for white, but one of the reasons I see plans for white is a really simple reason. White has more space here. And yes, pawn structure in chess is a disadvantage, but so is having less space. And white clearly has more space in this position. So I would say, okay, let's just say I proceed. Normally, I play knight d5, d6, g5. This position is actually very uncomfortable for black. How does black proceed? I'm cramping black's position with my pawns. I'm cramping black's position with my knight. You don't have moves like knight e5 in this position because your pawn is hanging. You don't want to play moves like e6 because your pawn on d6 is hanging. You don't want to play moves like rook e8 because knight c7 is a problem. You don't want to play weakening moves on your queen side like a6 because it makes it easier for me to play moves like d4, c4, and b5 down the road, and it also walks into knight attacks and different things that can happen there. Meanwhile, white has plenty of ways that he can improve his position. White can play b4, king b2, c4, etc. Or white can try to proceed with h4, h5, hg, open up the h-file, and play chess that way. And in the meantime, it's very difficult for black to come up with a really good plan. He could play bishop e6 and simply try to exchange this knight. Of course, when he does exchange this knight, you can transfer more pawns to the queen side. And as long as you haven't made moves that allow black to win this pawn, so you do have to time this well, you can proceed to get a majority over here on the queen side with this pawn structure. And you can try to win the game with this queen side pawn majority. So this is an option. If you can't do that, of course, other ideas are also possible. So my thought here is that from this position, white's better. Now, I know a lot of people are going to maybe comment on this, or maybe they're going to say, no, I don't think white's better. If you honestly don't think white's better, this is my challenge to you. I want you to take a look at this position in a chess engine. I want you to play against the chess engine, have the engine play against you, and I want you to have the engine play against another engine. And play with it for a while and see what happens. I've put this position through engines, and I've done all three of those things. I've had engines play engines, I've had it do a number of different things, and you'll find that if you do this, you'll start to realize that white's position is actually much more comfortable to play than black's. And even if you just have engine play against engine, you'll find that more often than not, white will win in these positions, and white has a very high winning percentage here. So basically, if we go back, the novelty that I'm recommending in this position is a3. And this move was introduced by Paul Carres back in the 1950s. And it's a very strong novelty. I wish he played it more, and it's very rarely seen. So when you do play this move, you have a very good chance of surprising your opponent and hopefully getting an advantage. I hope this novelty works as well for you as it worked for me. Thank you very much.